Tricky. I agree. I mean, it's almost like a super philosophical type of topic. Guys, welcome to our talk. I mean, we are already live. And translucent truth is very intriguing. I agree with you, Irene. It's very intriguing type of topic. And no wonder Alice again and again coming with powerful topics. So I definitely will give the first word, Alice, to verbalize kind of and to get your point. You know, what was your choice and why you phrased it in that particular way? Translucent truth.
Okay, well, we had been talking about the truth. We've been talking about reflections. We have been talking about how we feel about things. And I was thinking last week when we said, okay, we should talk about something, the truth. And I was thinking, what is the truth? My truth and your truth could be completely different if we're talking about how we perceive something, or maybe we're talking about the emotions that we have concerning a certain subject. So we've been talking about the racism and the pandemic and justice. How I perceive something could be completely different than how John perceived it, or how Irene, how you. So there's like a veil when we take the facts out of the truth and only deal with our emotion and our perception. It's like a veil. It's some part of the truth that's in there, but it's not clear. And actually, when I was thinking, what word could I use? My granddaughter came up with that word. And I was like, what could I use? I want something that means not clear, kind of vague. And she said, well, use translucent. And I thought, that's a good idea. Translucent truth. So that's how we are talking about that today.
Wow, translucent. You know, yeah. I just want to make sure that I understand. I have a sense what translucent really means, but yeah, just because I'm not native in English, I'm just curious. Translucency, being translucent doesn't imply that actually transparent a little bit, like kind of
almost transparent.
almost exactly.
There's a veil,
That's why when I hear translucent, I always have a feeling of jellyfish. I don't know. So that's why,
because they're not, you can't see through them, but you can it's kind of clouded.
yeah. Okay, wow. And it's interesting, you mentioned certain things which I would love to dive in, because you mentioned also the term facts. So of course, interpretation, some of us probably have a NLP, background education, and we were taught that, as a human beings, we have a number of filters. Some of them are biological, like for example, our retina, kind of our eyes just can see certain particular range of the frequency of light, and some frequencies we don't see. And some animals can see what we don't see. So and if we don't see something, doesn't mean it's not exist. It doesn't exist. So there are some kind of biological things which we are not able to perceive, and there are also filters related to our beliefs, because as soon as we start interpreting facts, then it comes kind of color. I mean, we are making it ours, we're making it kind of very, very personal. And I would love to hear everybody's opinion about that. Where is how to grade from that translucency, how extract the truth which closer to reality, like a closer. Is there any way, guys? Who wants to start first?
I'll go
Wow,
on.
that's a great question, Alex, because as a physics, that even in the science, we have the Max Planck age. That means the experiment is influenced by the point of view of the observer.
Yeah.
And theory in early Greek means points of view, the vision, and is conditioned by the observers. So that's a very, very tricky question. And also because I have a background in epistemology, you know, there are
Okay.
certain conditions. Sometimes even science is conditioned by ideology and points of view. I think that the way that we can um, achieve a certain level of awareness, that we can even intuitively, when I mean intuition in the Latin sense, that means go deeper, is about asking questions. So, which is something that I'm not seeing now? What is the I'm not seeing? Um, is my background influencing my vision of the
Mhm.
situation? What is the ideology that is expressing these thoughts? Asking always questions. We are coaches. We always ask questions. So why we don't question continuously the reality? Not to get crazy about that, but just to see, is another possibility behind what I'm seeing now, or beyond what I'm seeing now? And how can I look these things in a different way? I play sometimes the role to make the devil advocate when I see things. So if I was this person, what can I do? And put myself in different place, in quite discomfort zone for myself, for examples. And this helps me to have a wider observation on things. That's my personal experience.
Yeah. Well, I agree. I agree with you, and I believe as a coaches, we usually what we often do is trying to change someone's perspective or at least enrich it. I mean, what in NLP we call it frames, and there are other theories they call it mental models, or something which you kind of you see things automatically because of your background, because of your like typical type of thinking. You see situation instantly from certain angle, and it's nice to be aware that this is angle. Like someone, it's a classical example, the glass half full or half empty. I mean, which is true? Well, both, but the flavor is someone is upset, someone is happy because of that, because of description, right? And both description are true, and just different frames, different mental models, different filters, different colors. Half empty meaning it's like a lack of something. Half full, it seems like person is an optimist, and both are true, and that's where really comes confusion, because as soon as like some Zen master say, as soon as you open your mouth, it's lie. I mean, so what we're supposed to do, like keep silence? And yeah, that's we need to somehow, you know somehow we need to communicate, but all the time remember that every time when we open our mouth, probably it become a little bit of kind of lack of truth already, a little bit. So, Alice, what do you think?
I agree. I agree with that. I think sometimes, like Irene was saying, it depends on your background and where you come from, how you perceive things.
Yeah.
Just the other night, I was talking to a friend on Facebook, and we were communicating. And this friend, I've known her probably now for maybe about 10 years, and we're pretty good friends. You know, we have always been pretty close and have talked about things, but the subject of racism came up.
Yeah.
And I mean, she had made a few posts on Facebook, and I had always looked at them. Just so happened this friend is white. And I was like, I wonder what is her thinking with this? So she made one, and I decided, because this had been going on for a few weeks, okay, maybe it's time we have a conversation. So I asked her, what exactly do you mean when you make these posts? And she said, well, I just want to make sure that people know that Blacks weren't the only slaves in America. And I said, okay, I understand that, but it's a different kind of slavery. And she said, slavery is slavery. And I said, no, there's an indentured servant, and then there's a chattel slavery. And she was like, it's the same. I said, no, you can work your way out as an indentured servant. When you are chattel, you consider property. You're not really considered human. You're considered property, and there's no change in that. And as we continued to talk, I could see how she had came to some of her conclusion, which was really just a lack of the facts.
Obviously.
And she didn't have the facts. She just hadn't been educated to it.
Yeah.
And sought, seek to find the facts. So she had one perception. That's what her perception. And if I would have went a different way, both of our emotions would have came into play, and facts would have went out the window. We wouldn't have gotten anywhere.
Yeah.
So I was thinking, wow, that's really a case where we have that translucent truth. Some of what she was saying was true. Some of what I was saying was true from our perception, from our emotion. But then when we brought the facts into it, it was a totally, completely different conversation.
Yeah. Yeah. So in reaching, before you kind of make any conclusion or be more or less sure in your description, supposed to collect all possible facts first and really enrich, your map of the world with the pure facts.
Yeah.
And after that, maybe you could kind of try to draw some conclusions, which again may be flavored and colored, but
Right.
at least you're going to be probably one step closer to the, I would say, reality, or whatever we call it. John, you've been. I understand why you are silent. I didn't give you a possibility to talk at all. So now it's your choice. Now your time, please.
Well, no, it's a deep subject, and I think, I was thinking about stories in my life that, I mean, they aren't necessarily always related to the current topics, but I'll share this story because it's a personal one, but it tells you about kind of where we go with our emotions. I know that, when Alice posted this, we were talking about different levels of truth. And it's a sad story, but it's really important in the context of when I was young. Really, my best friend and I were together all the time, and we used to do sleepovers, and we spent most of our years together. And I had developed a relationship with his mother, who was always extremely kind to me and always supportive, and she was lovely to me. And there were always rumors that something was going on behind the scenes. And some people had said she was an alcoholic, and other people said she might have had some mental challenges. And I really could not comprehend that, because in my view, in my observation and experience emotionally, I didn't see that. I saw this beautiful woman who always was kind to me. And it wasn't until many years later she died. And she ended up dying due to alcoholism. And here were all these years between. And I kept thinking, wow. So that was the truth. That was the truth, that she was struggling with this addiction, and it ended up taking her life. But I resisted for so long what I had heard, because I didn't trust other people. I thought they were being, they weren't being nice. I think people were creating rumors. And this is when I was young. So my whole basis of my reality was simply and mostly around my emotional connection with her. And then as I thought about it, I thought about my best friend, and this was his mother. And he lived with this for years and years. And he kept silent, of course, which many people do. But I really reflected. I kept thinking, what's the story? And this was the story that came to me, because I thought, oh my gosh. And I was young. I didn't understand alcoholism. I didn't understand. Most people around me didn't drink. But I resisted that truth so deeply until it actually happened, until I found out that truth of what happened. Because for me, I had the emotional connection. I had the response to how she was treating me. I could not fathom that something like that was true. And so even after all these years, and we're talking 40 some years, I still grapple with this idea of what was really happening. What didn't I see? What did I not allow myself to see? Because as I began to think back, yes, there were signs. It's that I didn't know what to look for. I didn't understand. And so it kind of goes into this idea of asking those questions and looking more deeply into, as I think about some of the moments, this kind of made sense. Maybe some of the behavior was a little off back then. So I don't know if it's a great example, but it really, we talk about reflection. This is something that happened a long time ago, but it's still with me, because there was still a part of me that wanted to deny that truth because of my experience with that person. But until I thought about, oh my gosh, my friend, like what path did he, in that journey that he had to walk down all those years, he didn't talk about it. And it wasn't until after she died that he began to speak about it and began to share some of the stories. So we don't know what we don't know. And, again, maybe not the greatest of stories, but it shows kind of where we stand. I know where I stood. My observations were purely based on emotion. They were based on connection, but I wasn't really seeing the truth of what was happening. So, and I'll just segue really quickly, even in our situation with COVID, I had a conversation with somebody the other day who said that their friend believes it's a hoax. And I was still shocked by this. And I know that this is a reality, especially in the United States. And again, where is the information coming from? What questions are being asked? How are we digging more deeply? Not making any assumptions or hanging on and attaching to things, but simply becoming informed. We talked about being educated, but I was still blown away, because then I realized my truth is different, because I know people who have died. And I know from my work that I do more about the science behind it. And so I recognize that this other person is just taking things at face value. So anyways, I know that's a lot, but I wanted to share those two stories, but particularly the one about my friend, because it was a veil that was on this situation for so long. And the veil was not lifted until after she died. So that's my story.
Well,
Not sure
it
where to
is
take
actually
that.
it's actually interesting because I mean, at least what I take out from your story is that everyone has his own, I mean, I would say set of filters, because obviously physical experience, what you observe for you is more reliable than somebody's words and rumors, and I think it's a great stuff. It's like, to believe what someone said, or to believe your own eyes and experience. Of course, you are not experienced enough to see some subtleties in behavior which would maybe indicating that she's struggling with alcoholism. But I think it's great. Yeah, your filters are just, you trust your direct experience, not just what someone said. And yeah, I see the point. I think it would be actually, it's nice if people, I don't know, believed less to what they are told, but more what they really experience. But it's also like a two side of coins, because I assume, and I could easily see how white people do not experience any racism. I mean, not coming across that. And like, for example, uh, well, I everything what comes to racism, I kind of experience in that kind of power just through media, movies, and through other people experiences. Because personally, I don't experience it, but it doesn't mean it doesn't exist. So we need to kind of distinguish, where, how to set our filters, and what to believe, and in search for truth. Example, my personal very quick story. um, after university, I don't know if you know, but maybe I mentioned before that my scientific career finished very abruptly. I mean, I get retina detachment on both eyes, and I end up in a surgery kind of, and as a result, I moved and changed career. But the first thing I did, already being kind of PhD in nuclear physics, I decided, okay, actually I need to choose some other direction, and I decided to graduate from medical school, and not the highest, not like a doctor, but more like in Russian we call it feldsher. It's like a mid level of medical personnel, almost like a nurse, kind of a little bit higher than nurse. And one of the practice, actually, for a couple of years, I was studying and actually graduated. I have a diploma, medical, like I have a medical education, which I got after already physics. And one of the practice which I went through many different types of practices, working actually in the clinics. But one practice was influenced me, I know, really seriously. Actually, I was working in the morgue for months. So, guys, that's shocking. I mean, when you, like, normal people, normal jobs, you walk in, the sunny day, you are laughing, you're eating ice cream. When I spent one day as a practice in the morgue, when people are coming and they all dead, and dealing with that, and when I go out of that, like my 8 hours kind of practice, um, I am looking around and thinking, wow, people are walking like a happy, smiling, as if they are, it's like, I don't know how to even to describe it. It's like a very abrupt, sharp change of perspective. The death is very close. It's practically, I would say, touching our shoulder. and we are in a total ignorance. It's like we are gonna live forever. It's amazing, but I understand that when you are not kind of when you are not touching it, when you are not exposed to that every day or every hour, it doesn't exist. Everything is nice,
Right.
but yeah, this is amazing. What I mean is that world is full of different things, and the fact that we are not experiencing something totally doesn't mean that it doesn't exist. And yeah, that was kind of shocking awareness. I was like all months, I was practically every time when I go from that morgue out on the streets and see those faces, shiny and smiley. I just don't know how to even comprehend all that kind of contrast, with the dead bodies and happy smiley faces. And I don't know how people really totally ignoring it, but yeah, like, it's understandable. You don't touch it, it doesn't exist, kind of. And so that was my experience. Again, personal story. Very, very short one. Irene.
Right, I have a lot of things in my mind.
Oh yeah.
Connected with the story with John Ward. I think John was fantastic because he wasn't touched from the all biases we have against the alcoholist. So
Yeah.
he has the most genuine relationship. I look at his experience like, wow, this is fantastic. I'm co-author with a book talking about presence, and the researcher did analyzed how our energy when we are present impact our clients and with artificial intelligence. And I'm going to present my presentation by basic on this, how the way I look at my clients change the perception of itself. And this is huge.
Mm-hmm.
When you see a human being like a wonderful, sublime being, no matter what is his behavior, this changed the way they perceive themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And now we have this scientific basis. When she will put out her PhD dissertation, we will have another perspective, because the book was much more for a good audience, was less scientific and more digestible, even for people that has not deep understanding of the scientific process.
Mm-hmm.
But it was a great discovery on how everything is energy and how we impact each other by knowing something. So, or not knowing something. So, when we have this pure relationship, everything changed. The translucent relationship. So,
Yeah. Amazing.
This is what a great discovery. How we impact, how everything is interconnected. And it was fantastic hearing the history of John, because I had also another experience with a person. I was making a conversation because I was HR and the recruiting manager for Remax, and she has this tool called, it's kind of borderline versus psychosis disorder. Despite this, she had an incredible relationship with me, because I noticed that, but I wasn't touched about that. I was trying to understand if she would be able to make this job, and she would. But the broker didn't want to hire her because of her psychological disturb. And I told him, listen, if she is followed by a psychiatrist, we can hire her because she has the good qualities to do the job very well. And it was a matter of relationship. And this surprised even me, because I was in the position that I should be as much as I can neutral to make the interest of the company I was hired, and then understand if this would be a good person for the company. And it was a great surprise because, all my biases based on the current psychologies, they fell down as soon as I really have a deep relationship, a deep conversation with this person. So
John,
my question is, sorry.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, I think, John, it's all your fault. You turned our conversation to completely different kind of direction.
No, it's
So,
the same.
yeah, it's incredible. It's like how your attitude towards something change that something, and something which is maybe true become almost like a your true and a real true
Right.
because of your perception. I mean, there are I think I heard about some really amazing psychological research when psychologists are making research about teachers and students, and I remember what they I would say they collected like I would say pupils who are not good at math, and they introduce it to the teacher as this class is the brilliant, the best of the best. So they misled the teacher by introducing that now teacher is going to be working with some kind of geniuses of and the amazing thing is that when the attitude of the teacher to the class was that kind of the high level attitude, so that they measured how quickly that class improved, and improvement was over the roof. how those children who are not good at math started to accelerate, because I mean the only explanation is because the attitude of that teacher to the class was just, so the teacher was looking in and seeing different truth, and that influenced the whole class, the whole performance. Isn't it amazing? And the question is, what is the truth? I mean, are they really kind of bad students, or not really? What is the fact? I mean, yeah, I don't have answer. I'm just kind of raising the question, because it's like Irene, you saw in John's story that kind of angle. So
Yes.
he didn't perceive that person and he resisted to see her as alcoholic. And maybe, John, you added, who knows? I'm speculating, but maybe you helped her, to be on this planet a little bit longer. I don't know. It's a really question.
And the other question is, maybe John helped her to have some moment of normality that other people didn't give to her.
That's what I mean. Help her to be here longer, be healthier.
Yeah, and I think about Alice's story that she started with, and it all comes back to that. Not to speak, but it just bringing this all up, that Alice, when you shared your story, you could have come in to that conversation with your friend in a very different way, because of what she was posting, what she believed her truth to be. But you showed up. And it goes back to what Irene was saying. It's about relationships and connection, right? Yeah. And even beyond that. But you showed up in a very different way, because you did not want to see her as an enemy or someone who was against you, but more of, how do I create understanding? So again, so much about relationship as well. And that seems to be the theme here. It's, how can relationship and that connection and that energy that's created in those relationships somehow move into what truth is, but anyways, I wanted to share that because it just all to your your story, Alice, about how you showed up with your friend.
Alice, how you managed not to react, not to, like, if someone posts something which you usually do not agree and usually have emotion about, people have instant reaction.
Well, this coaching stuff, it really does work.
Yeah.
Because there was a time that I would emotionally react to things.
Yeah.
And I find myself now, sometime I might read something on Facebook and my fingers go to typing. And then I delete. And I take a breath and I think, okay, how did this person get to the place they are now? What path did they take? We take different paths. All of us that's in this conversation now, we got to this point on different paths, different beliefs, different experience. So I try to pull that always to the front of my mind. How did this person get here? And how did I get where I am? And how can we create something while we are both in this space to go forward in a positive way? So,
yeah. And I don't know, from that conversation, I see potentially how people could cross the line. I don't know, maybe that kind of postmodernism, like a nihilism, when there is like the notion that everyone has his own truth almost implies that there is no truth. But I believe there are facts. And I think there is a very thin line, when say, oh, everybody's truth is personal, so as if like there is no really, like, even in physics, there is a theory of relativity, and it means like if you learned physics a little bit, so like every velocity or speed is kind of relative, depending on the system where I look at it. But I don't know, maybe it's like an analogy, but there is a one speed which is absolute. Speed of light, for example, and it's in all systems, it will be still speed of light. I mean, it's kind of maybe difficult to comprehend how it's possible. So in all systems which move with different speed, the speed of light will be everywhere speed of light and nothing else. But I would say that in terms of truth, yeah, there are different flavors, perceptions, angles, but there are facts. And that's, I think, it's kind of our rope, to get out of that labyrinth. We need to, when we lost and we have like troubles, we need to say, okay, guys, let's just stick to the facts, and let's start from there. And maybe there is some kind of way to get people together and find the consensus when we are talking about facts. Of course, if it's possible, to fix those facts, because sometimes when it comes to history, it could be kind of also quite difficult. But if there are some documents and there are some real facts, that try to avoid interpretation as much as possible.
mm-hmm.
That's what I take from this conversation. Guys, who wants to summarize what your takeaway from our talk?
My takeaway will be that there are sometimes, like in John's story, sometimes we have the facts, and I guess in facts, you can't change the truth when you have facts, but it depends on the circumstance and the situation how we use those facts.
Oh yeah.
Like in his, I mean, it was a veil over he could see something, probably had some kind of little feeling that something might not be right. But what was more important was the relationship between him and his friend's mother. And because she was an alcoholic, that didn't change the emotional between them and her kindness towards him.
Mm-hmm.
And then in Irene's story, where she was telling how once she had a conversation and kind of a relationship and talked to the lady, it didn't change the fact that she had the issues, the mental issues, but it changed her perception and what she was really willing to do, how she felt about it.
Absolutely.
And then when you were telling your story, I mean, about the morgue, which is one of my creepiest places I grew, but it didn't change the fact when you went outside, when you were in the morgue, there were people outside smiling. When you were outside of the morgue, there were people inside there. All those were facts. But all we can have all these facts, and sometimes we still live kind of like in a alternate world. We have facts here and we have our perceptions and emotions here. Sometimes they work together, sometimes they work apart. But
Yeah.
we should always at least look at the facts and see by how can I use these facts also to be kind, to live my truth where it doesn't damage someone else. So
Yeah.
guess that would be my perception. You have to look at your fact. What you have to look at your truth. Is it a combination of just facts, or just emotion, or just perception? You have
Yeah.
to at least become aware. Become
Yeah.
aware of what you call in your truth. And I guess that would be mine. Just become aware of what you are calling it true. You might want to change it, you might not. You have a choice, but at least be aware.
Well, that's a difficult part. And for example, I totally agree. For example, when it comes like if someone was struggling with alcoholism, maybe it is a fact. Actually, it's under question. Like we need to define when it become real fact. First of all, like how much, how often, they need to be defined. But what does it really mean?
Mhm.
I mean, someone is so. Do you need to do you need to behave differently if someone struggling with alcoholism?
Mhm.
I mean, that's where interpretation comes. I mean, if you could postpone interpretation as much as possible, the fact not necessarily pushing you to anywhere. It's already interpretation what pushes you somewhere. And that's where we kind of need to be really aware. I agree with you. Aware when we start interpreting and already behaving in accordance to interpretation. And that's the question, guys. John, what do you think? Summary.
I'm with everybody. I'm good. No, I appreciate it. I appreciate what I most appreciate is how you all took my story. Because again, I was coming from my own perspective, but
Yeah.
I guess in the same way, how each of you and how that story resonated, and how it affected you after hearing it. So that's another piece to this, right? When a story is shared, you weren't walking in my shoes, but you took something from this story, and looked at it. I had never thought about how I may have actually normalized her life in those moments. I mean, to hear that feedback and say, I was treating her so normally when the rest of the world may not have been. I was treating her with so much respect that she may not have been receiving from the world. And that I had never thought about that. And so that was very powerful. So even
You just
even in that moment,
you just resisted to see her as an alcoholic, and that's amazing. Yeah, Irene picked it up kind of directly. Obviously, you are working on your book right now and kind of tuned into some Max Planck quantum mechanics, observing the experiment, and yeah, it's amazing stuff. Amazing. So, Irene, what would you say?
Well, I have so many backgrounds that sometimes they drive me crazy, and more and crazier even people that listen to me. So, no, I think that the important things is also, even we completely disagree with some point of view or truth of people, just listen and look at it, because sometimes maybe they have information that we don't have. And my takeaway is, how can we combine all this information together? Maybe have the third way, not just the two opposite. Maybe we intelligence is always more powerful than the I intelligence.
Yeah, nice. That's a nice point to stop, guys. Thank you very much. I really appreciated our conversation, and we obviously are not aiming to come up here with a very clear definition, and people who are listening to us like, oh, okay, now I know. Well, obviously we are talking about really complicated stuff. You know, I don't know, there is a direction in philosophy like agnostics, you know, they say you will never kind of know the truth, but you have ability to get closer and closer. So it's like you can really not, you know, you don't really never know really what is, but yeah, there is a chance to, you know, iterate and get closer. And so that's a kind of one of the philosophical taking on getting to the truth. Thank you, everyone, and looking forward to our next talk. Irene,
thank you.
Bye.
thank you,
everyone.
bye, everyone.